Something just happened that changes everything for Americans holding dollars. And I'm not talking about some distant threat or economic theory. This is real. It's happening right now, and the clock is ticking. February 15th, 2026. Remember this date, because what went live this week could mark the beginning of the end for the dollar as we know it. And here's the thing that should terrify you. Most Americans have no idea this is even happening. While you were scrolling through your phone, watching the news talk about interest rates and inflation, a new financial system quietly launched. Not in some backroom deal, not in secret, but right out in the open. And the people behind it, they're not hiding their intentions. They're broadcasting them loud and clear. The dollar replacement is here. Now, before you click away thinking this is just another doom and gloom prediction, stick with me. Because what I'm about to show you isn't speculation. It's documentation. It's real data. It's statements from central banks, from governments, from the very institutions that control global money. And if you're holding dollars, if you have a savings account, if you're planning for retirement, you need to understand what's coming in the next 90 days. Here at Finance Explained, we don't do clickbait. We do facts, we do research, and we connect the dots that mainstream media won't touch. So if you're serious about protecting your wealth, hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel, because the information you're about to hear could be the difference between financial survival and complete devastation. Let's break this down from the beginning. For decades, the United States dollar has been the world's reserve currency. That means when countries trade with each other, when they buy oil, when they settle international transactions, they use dollars. This gave America an incredible advantage. We could print money, run massive deficits, and export our inflation to the rest of the world. Other countries had no choice but to hold dollars. They needed them to function in the global economy. But that system? It's been cracking for years, and now it's breaking apart completely. The cracks started showing back in 2014 when Russia got hit with sanctions. They realized something important. If your wealth is held in dollars and your transactions run through dollar systems, you can be controlled. You can be cut off. You can be destroyed with the push of a button. So Russia started making moves. They began dumping dollar reserves. They started buying gold. They created alternative payment systems. Then came China, the world's second largest economy, watching everything unfold. They saw what happened to Russia. They saw the power America wielded through dollar dominance, and they started planning, not next year, not in some distant future. They started planning for this exact moment we're living through right now. Fast forward to 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. America and Europe respond with the most aggressive financial sanctions in history. They freeze Russian central bank reserves. They kick Russian banks out of SWIFT, the global payment messaging system. They essentially weaponize the dollar in a way we've never seen before. And here's what most people missed. That wasn't a victory. That was a declaration of war on the dollar system itself. Because every country watching realized they could be next. If Russia's central bank reserves can be frozen, if their access to dollars can be cut off overnight, then no country's dollar holdings are truly safe. The result? A scramble. A mad rush to find alternatives. Countries that had been talking about moving away from the dollar for years suddenly shifted into overdrive. Trade agreements got signed, new payment systems got built, central bank digital currencies got fast-tracked. The machinery for dollar replacement went into construction mode. And now, in February 2026, that machinery just got switched on. Here's what went live this past week. The BRICS nations, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, plus their expanding membership, just activated their alternative payment system. Not a test, not a pilot program, the real thing. A fully operational network that allows countries to trade without touching a single dollar. But it gets worse. This isn't just about settling trades between a handful of countries. This system is designed to scale. It's built to handle the kind of transaction volume that could legitimately replace SWIFT. And the countries lining up to join, they represent more than half the world's population and a massive chunk of global GDP. Let me put this in perspective. When you go to the gas station and fill up your tank, you're paying in dollars. But the oil you're buying, it's priced in dollars on the global market. That's been true since the 1970s when America made a deal with Saudi Arabia. Oil for security, dollars for stability. The petrodollar system was born. Now imagine that system breaking. Imagine China buying oil from Saudi Arabia in yuan. Imagine India buying Russian gas in rupees. Imagine Brazil and Argentina trading in their own currencies. Every transaction that doesn't use dollars is a transaction that doesn't require dollar reserves. And when countries don't need dollar reserves, they start selling them. That selling pressure, it's already started. And it's accelerating faster than anyone predicted. Look at the data from central banks around the world. In the last 12 months, foreign holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds have dropped by record amounts. These aren't small numbers. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars being dumped onto the market, and that was before this new system went live. Now, here's where it gets really dangerous for everyday Americans. When foreign countries sell dollars and treasury bonds, someone has to buy them. And when there aren't enough foreign buyers, guess who steps in? The Federal Reserve. They print more money to buy the bonds that nobody else wants. And what does printing money create? Inflation. The kind of inflation that destroys your purchasing power, wipes out your savings, and makes everything you buy more expensive. You're already feeling it at the grocery store. You're seeing it at the gas pump. You're watching your rent or mortgage eat up more of your paycheck. But what's coming in the next 90 days could make what we've experienced look like nothing. Because here's the reality that nobody in Washington wants to talk about. The American government is addicted to debt. We're running trillion-dollar deficits year after year. We're spending money we don't have on programs we can't afford. And the only reason we've gotten away with it for so long is because the rest of the world had to buy our debt. They needed dollars, so they needed treasury bonds. But what happens when they don't need dollars anymore? What happens when they have an alternative system that works just as well, maybe even better? What happens when buying American debt becomes optional instead of necessary? The whole house of cards starts to collapse. And that collapse has a timeline, 90 days. That's the window we're looking at based on how quickly this new payment system is being adopted. Within 3 months, analysts are predicting that a significant portion of global trade could shift away from dollar settlement. Not all of it, not overnight, but enough to trigger a chain reaction that changes everything. Let me walk you through what that chain reaction looks like. Stage 1, countries reduce their dollar reserves because they don't need as many for trade. Stage 2, they sell those excess reserves, putting downward pressure on the dollar's value. Stage 3, as the dollar weakens, more countries rush to get out before it falls further. Stage 4, the Federal Reserve has to choose between letting the dollar crash or printing massive amounts of money to support it. Stage 5, either way, your wealth gets destroyed, either through dollar devaluation or through inflation. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is basic economics, supply and demand. When demand for dollars drops and supply increases, the value goes down. And we're not talking about a small adjustment. We're talking about a potential restructuring of the entire global financial system. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. China's tried this before. Russia's tried this before. The dollar always survives. And you're right. Previous attempts to challenge dollar dominance have failed. But here's what's different this time. The infrastructure is real. The technology is built. The political will is aligned. And most importantly, the timing is perfect. America is weaker than it's been in decades. Our debt levels are unsustainable. Our political system is fractured. Our credibility on the global stage has taken hit after hit. Meanwhile, the countries moving away from the dollar are stronger, more unified, and more prepared than ever before. China spent the last 15 years building the Belt and Road Initiative, creating trade relationships with over 140 countries. Russia weathered the sanctions and came out with a more resilient, self-sufficient economy. India is rising as a major global power. Brazil and other Latin American nations are tired of economic colonialism through the dollar system. These aren't isolated moves. This is coordinated strategy. And the new payment system that just went live? It's not some clunky, untested platform. It's been in development for years. It's been tested extensively. It's designed by people who understand exactly how the current system works and exactly how to build something better. Better for them, at least. Not better for Americans holding dollars. Here's a question you need to ask yourself. If you knew your currency was going to lose 30, 40, maybe 50% of its value in the next year, what would you do? Would you just sit there and watch it happen? Or would you take action to protect yourself? Because that's the decision millions of Americans are going to face very soon, and most of them won't even know it's happening until it's too late. The mainstream media will call it a market correction. Politicians will blame external factors. The Federal Reserve will promise they have everything under control. But behind the scenes, the smart money is already moving. They're moving into hard assets. They're diversifying out of dollar-denominated investments. They're preparing for a world where the dollar isn't king anymore. And you need to understand something critical here. This isn't just about investments or trading portfolios. This affects every single person with a bank account in America. Your savings, your paycheck, your retirement fund, everything is denominated in dollars. When the dollar loses value, you lose wealth. It's that simple. Let me give you a real-world example of how fast this can happen. Look at what happened to the British pound in 2022. In a matter of weeks, it crashed to its lowest level against the dollar in decades. People who had their wealth in pounds watched their purchasing power evaporate. Imports became more expensive. Travel became unaffordable. The cost of living skyrocketed. Now imagine that happening to the dollar, except worse, because the dollar isn't just Britain's currency. It's been the global reserve currency. The fall from that height is much, much steeper. And here's what makes this situation even more terrifying. The government can't just fix this with policy changes or interest rate adjustments. We're past that point. The structural problems are too deep. The debt is too high. The geopolitical shift is too far along. This is like watching a slow-motion avalanche. You can see it coming, you know what's going to happen, but stopping it? That's a different story. So what are the people in power doing about it? Are they sounding the alarm? Are they preparing the American public for what's coming? Not even close. Hoi esh. They're either completely clueless or they're deliberately keeping quiet because they know that public panic would accelerate the collapse. Think about it. If the Treasury Secretary came out tomorrow and said the dollar's dominance is ending and everyone should prepare for major devaluation, what would happen? Bank runs, market crashes, complete chaos. So instead, they stay silent. They downplay the threat. They assure everyone that everything is fine while quietly making their own preparations. But you don't have to wait for permission from the government to protect yourself. You don't need some official announcement to take action. The warning signs are everywhere if you know where to look. And that's exactly what we do here at Finance Explained. We look at the data, we connect the dots, and we give you the information you need to make informed decisions. Now let's talk about what this means for specific groups of Americans. If you're retired or close to retirement, living on a fixed income, you're in the most vulnerable position. Your Social Security payments, your pension, your savings, all of that is in dollars. When the dollar loses half its value, your retirement income effectively gets cut in half. The lifestyle you planned for, the security you worked decades to build, it could vanish in months. If you're middle-aged and still working, you're facing a different nightmare. Your wages might go up nominally, but they won't keep pace with real inflation. Your mortgage or rent will eat up more of your income. Your debt burden will feel heavier even if the nominal amount stays the same. And that retirement you're planning for, the target keeps moving further away. If you're young and just starting out, you might think you have time to recover from this. But here's the brutal truth. You're entering your prime earning years during a period of potential currency collapse. The wealth accumulation phase of your life could coincide with the worst monetary crisis in modern history. Instead of building wealth, you'll be fighting just to maintain purchasing power. But here's what nobody's talking about. This crisis also creates opportunities, massive opportunities for people who see what's coming and position themselves correctly. Throughout history, every major currency collapse has created a new class of wealthy individuals. People who understood the shift before it happened and moved their assets accordingly. Gold and silver have been the traditional safe havens during currency crises. And right now, we're seeing unprecedented demand for physical precious metals. Central banks are buying gold at record rates. Not just Russia and China, Western central banks too. They know something. They're preparing for something. And they're doing it quietly while telling the public everything is fine. But it's not just about precious metals. Real assets in general, things with intrinsic value that can't be inflated away, become incredibly valuable during currency crises. Real estate in the right markets, productive businesses, commodities. Even cryptocurrency, despite its volatility, represents an attempt to create money outside the traditional system. The key is understanding that we're moving from a world where paper promises held value to a world where tangible assets become king again. And that transition, that shift in the global financial paradigm, it's happening right now, this week, this month, in the next 90 days. Now I want you to do something for me. Look at your financial situation right now. Look at where your money is. How much is sitting in regular savings accounts earning basically nothing while inflation eats it alive? How much is in dollar-denominated assets that could lose significant value? How diversified are you, really? Because the people who survive financial crises aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones who see the crisis coming and adapt. They're the ones who don't wait for permission or official confirmation. They're the ones who act on information while everyone else is still in denial. And here's what makes the next 90 days so critical. This isn't a gradual shift anymore. The activation of this alternative payment system creates a tipping point. Once enough countries start using it, once enough trade flows through it, the momentum becomes unstoppable. Network effects take over. More users make the system more valuable, which attracts more users, which makes it even more valuable. It's the same dynamic that made the dollar dominant in the first place. Except now it's working against the dollar. We're already seeing the early adopters jump in. Saudi Arabia just announced they're open to settling oil sales in currencies other than dollars. That's massive. That's the petrodollar system starting to crack. The United Arab Emirates is conducting trade with India in rupees. Indonesia is pushing for local currency settlement in ASEAN trade. These aren't hypothetical scenarios anymore. These are actual transactions happening right now. And every single one of those transactions is a nail in the coffin of dollar dominance. Because once the precedent is set, once countries realize they can trade without dollars and the sky doesn't fall, the floodgates open. Why hold massive dollar reserves if you don't need them? Why expose yourself to American monetary policy if you have alternatives? Why keep funding American debt if it's not necessary for your trade? The answers to those questions terrify anyone who understands how the current system works. Because the American economy, the American lifestyle, the American standard of living, all of it is built on the foundation of dollar dominance. Take that away and everything changes. Your grocery bill doubles, your gas costs triple, imports become luxury items. The cheap goods from China that filled Walmart shelves, They get priced in yuan, and suddenly they're not so cheap anymore. The electronics, the clothing, the everyday items you take for granted, all of it becomes more expensive as the dollar weakens. But it's not just about prices going up. It's about options disappearing. When the dollar was king, Americans had access to global markets, global products, global opportunities. That access came from holding the world's most desired currency. When that changes, when the dollar becomes just another currency, maybe even a weak currency, that access shrinks dramatically. And the timeline for all of this isn't years down the road. It's months. The next 90 days will determine whether this alternative system gains enough momentum to truly challenge the dollar. And based on everything we're seeing, based on the speed of adoption, based on the political and economic forces at play, the answer is looking more and more like yes. So what do? How do you protect yourself when the entire monetary system is shifting beneath your feet? First, you educate yourself. You understand what's happening and why. You don't rely on mainstream media to tell you when to worry. By the time they admit there's a problem, it's too late to act. Second, you diversify. You don't keep all your wealth in one form. You spread it across different assets, different currencies, different types of holdings, some in precious metals, some in real assets, some in foreign currencies that might strengthen as the dollar weakens. You build a financial fortress that can withstand the storm. Third, you stay liquid. You need the ability to move quickly when opportunities arise or when threats materialize. Being over-leveraged, being locked into illiquid investments, that's dangerous in times of major transition. Flexibility becomes valuable. Fourth, you stay informed. You follow the data. You watch what central banks are doing, not what they're saying. You monitor global trade patterns. You pay attention to which countries are making moves and which are standing still. And fifth, you take action now, not next month, not when things get worse. Now. Because every day you wait is a day closer to the tipping point. Every day the alternative system gains users. Every day more countries reduce dollar exposure. Every day the risk grows. Here's the thing that keeps me up at night. The average American has no idea any of this is happening. They're living their lives, going to work, paying bills, completely unaware that the financial ground is shifting. And when the collapse comes, when the dollar loses significant value, they'll be blindsided. They'll wonder why nobody warned them. They'll ask why the government didn't do something. But the warning is here, right now, in this video. The question is whether you're listening, whether you're taking it seriously, whether you're willing to act on information that contradicts the comfortable narrative that everything is fine. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Am I overreacting, or do you see the same warning signs? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Because the more people who understand what's coming, the better prepared we'll be as a society. The dollar replacement just went live. The 90-day countdown has started. And what you do in this window could determine your financial future for decades to come. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for confirmation. The evidence is right in front of you. This is Finance Explained, bringing you the truth about what's really happening in the financial world. Stay informed, stay prepared, and whatever you do, don't ignore the warning signs. The next 3 months will define the next 30 years. Make sure you're on the right side of history.